The evidence for souls and for a designing intelligence is a barrier against using materialism to justify transgenderism. Although the criticisms given earlier show that there is no coherent, defensible rationale to support the transgender movement, there is still one final play that an advocate of the transgender movement might make in order to justify the movement's efforts. The advocate might contend that God does not exist, that we have no souls, and that all that exists is physical. In other words, materialism is true. Thus, even the idea of male and female is just a human-created construct that we can be free to change if we feel like doing so, and all the ethical norms associated with biological sex are just groundless impositions that have no moral force. If atheism were true, such that there is no reality beyond the physical, no souls, and no immaterial beings, it would follow that there is no inherent human nature that dictated what the purposes of our bodies and sexual organs should be. Thus, we would not be able to act contrary to or violate that purpose, which is what homosexual sex does. Further, it would follow that any norms or ethics attached to the sexual dimorphism of the human species was entirely socially constructed and had no grounding in objective moral values or truths. In that case, one would concede to the transgender movement that having pronouns and words to mark out certain biological characteristics was simply a societal choice to value those biological characteristics, and any attempt to wed those characteristics to ethical norms or values was entirely made up by humans. If those norms are entirely made up, we can remake them as we see fit, or abolish them altogether, which is what the transgender movement wants to do. There are two problems with this view. First is the claim of many homosexual and transgender advocates that they are experiencing, or have experienced, a real injustice that needs to be fixed. Their fight for so-called equality is given in absolutist, moral terms. Others ought to agree with them, and everyday citizens should call them by their preferred pronouns. But this is in direct contradiction to the fact that if materialism is true, there are no absolute moral values. Outside of power or force, there is no reason to listen to them if materialism is true. This brings us to the second problem. Those in the homosexual and transgender movements know that this is not the way the world is. Their demands for so-called justice are an implicit denial of materialism and an affirmation that we have souls. We know that our bodies are designed and have purpose, that each one of us has an immaterial soul, and that there is a powerful immaterial being distinct from us. One can cite here a plethora of evidence of which each of us has first-person experience. We have rationality, which is inconsistent with everything about us being predetermined and physical. We persist through time and are morally culpable for past wrong choices, such that the me of 5 minutes ago is the same me as 5 years ago. In virtue of that, we are guilty for morally wrong choices that we have made in the past. This persistence through time and the culpability for past actions, which we assume in real life and know to be true of ourselves, is inconsistent with us being completely physical beings with no souls. We have a free will, a fact inconsistent with us being purely physical beings. There are objective moral values, which is inconsistent with atheism, and our knowledge of those objective moral values demonstrates that we have souls and are not completely material beings. Further, given that every time we have traced complex specified information of a certain size to its source, we have found intelligence, we are justified in making an abductive inference from the complex specified information that we see in the microscopic level of biology and in the cosmic level of fine-tuned parameters of the universe to the conclusion that the best explanation for that information is intelligence. If the evidence were only on the level of biology, it would be possible, though unreasonable, to suppose that the intelligence in question were from within the universe, that is, that the source of the intelligence was aliens, and that these aliens were responsible for the complex specified information we see in biology. However, in light of the fact that there is little or no evidence for aliens that we have never seen, and the fact that we know there is an immaterial intelligence capable of producing complex specified information in the biological realm, it takes more faith to believe in the alien hypothesis than in the hypothesis of a designing immaterial intelligence. The attempt to promote the hypothesis that the complex specified information in biology is from aliens is unreasonable and is more likely driven by a desire not to acknowledge one's creator and submit one's life to him. As for us, we do have sufficient evidence from first-person experience to know that each of us is an immaterial soul, and that an immaterial being must have created that soul or causally connected it to some part of the physical world, namely some part of our body. From that alone, I am more justified in my belief in an immaterial creator, if he created my soul, or immaterial being of immense power, if my soul always existed and he causally connected my soul to some part of my body, then someone else would be in his belief that aliens that he has never seen are ultimately responsible for the creation of earthly life in its informationally rich and varied complexity. Moreover, as the immaterial being preceding me has the power to impact this physical world, as evidenced by him giving me the power to impact it, I have good evidence to know that this immaterial being is sufficiently capable to have produced the complex specified information in nature. On top of this, when it comes to the complex specified information in the finely tuned parameters of the universe, it is salient to observe that the universe logically and temporally preceded the existence of aliens, and that aliens would therefore have had no part in affecting its finely tuned parameters. Aliens within the universe are not a possible explanation for the fine-tuning of the universe as a whole. The simplest explanation for the fine-tuning of the universe, and also the complex specified information of biology, remains an immaterial being who is outside of the universe. Granted that, the best scientific explanation for our bodies and ourselves is that they are the product of an immaterial designing intelligence. They have been created with a nature and with purpose. Acting contrary to that purpose and nature are thus morally wrong. Our nature as human beings thus does impose ethical obligations on the use of our sexuality, and it cannot be changed by any amount of surgery or hormones injected into the body. Those who are born biological males cannot become females, and their nature as biological males imposes ethical obligations on them, including that having sexual intercourse with another of their own biological sex is wrong. If we are moral beings whose nature is best fulfilled through doing what is right and avoiding what is wrong, and if our biological status as male or female dictates what actions are morally permitted and forbidden to us, then for our own good it is paramount that the distinction between biological male and biological female be maintained and upheld. This is what pronouns as markers of biological characteristics have done for the entirety of human history. The transgender movement's attempt to erase this distinction and the distinction's recognition of what is good for us as human beings has the effect of diverting us from what is good and leading us towards harm. That is, the transgender movement and its attempt to change the meaning of pronouns and words for men and women is evil, and participating in using pronouns and those words in a way that does not reflect our biological nature and its attendant ethical obligation is not loving or kind or respectful. In light of the foregoing, appeal to a materialistic naturalism cannot be used to justify the claims of the transgender movement, and we are left with having to recognize the reality that our bodies are designed and have purpose and a nature. The transgender movement is wrong because it refuses to recognize this design, nature, and purpose of our bodies, and anything that refuses to recognize the truth and reality of the world in which we live is in error.
Thank you for listening. Credible Faith is a global missions-minded apologetics ministry with content available in 7 different languages across 7 websites: German, Russian, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and English. If you would like to support the global apologetics work of Credible Faith, go to crediblefaith.org and click on the donate icon. If you would like me to give an apologetics workshop or participate in a debate at your university, or if you would like me to give a Great Commission missions conference or apologetics conference at your church, get in touch with me through the Contact Us section of the Credible Faith website. You can also submit a request through the website to get Credible Faith's monthly email. If you are a native speaker of Russian, German, Italian, French, Spanish, or Portuguese, and if you notice that an essay from the English website is not available on the Credible Faith website for your language, feel free to get in touch with me about translating the essay, and I would read through your translated material for quality control and the desire to see content from the essay made available in your language. Thank you for listening, and have a great night.